The Duke of Rooksley had both hands locked about Corinne Danby's wrists, holding her off him at arm's length, when the orangery door opened behind her. His first thought was that it did not signify, because it was Sibylla. His second, watching the girl let out a small artful cry and sag against him, was that a thing had just been done to him that he did not know how to undo. His third thought was the one he would remember. Sibylla stood in the doorway among the orange tubs with the September light behind her, and she looked at the two of them, and she smiled. Not a wounded smile, not the trembling, wretched thing a man might have known how to answer. A perfectly composed, perfectly pleasant smile of the sort a woman gives a stranger who has held a door for her. "Forgive me," Sibylla said. "I was told to come at 4. I see I have mistaken the hour. Corinne, your shawl is on the bench." And she went out, and drew the door to behind her with great care so that it should not bang. Tristram put Corinne into a chair rather harder than was gallant and went after her, and caught her in the yew walk, and it was there, standing on the gravel in the flat afternoon light, that he discovered how badly he had misread the whole of the summer. "Miss Danby, what you saw was not what it appeared." "I am sure it was not," Sibylla agreed. "Your sister turned her ankle. She reached for my arm. I was putting her back on her feet. Yes," she said, "that will be it. There was no anger in her at all. That was the thing that undid him." She stood there with her hands quiet in front of her and agreed with everything he said, and looked at him with a sort of kindness, the way one looks at explaining himself at a funeral, and he understood, with the ground going out from under him, that she was not deciding anything. She had decided already. "Miss Danby," he began. "My trunks are corded," said Sibylla. "They have been since Tuesday. The carriage is ordered for 8. I did not want to make a fuss of it at the ball, so I thought it better to go quietly in the morning." She dipped the smallest curtsy. "You have been a very generous host, Your Grace. I hope you will not think me ungrateful." Then she went in to dress for dinner, and she came down and was charming to everybody for 4 hours, and he sat at the head of his own table and could not eat. He had spent 11 weeks failing to say 6 words to her. He knew it now, standing at the foot of the stairs at midnight with the candles going out, and the knowledge was like a stone in his chest. He had been 38 and a duke, and had never in his life had to persuade anybody of anything, and so he had gone about it in the only way he could bear, obliquely. A book left where she would find it, with a passage marked. A ride ordered for a party of 6 so that he might be beside her for 2 miles of it. Notes, folded small, sent up to her by way of her sister, because her mother watched the post at Rooksley like a bailiff, and he had been fool enough to think discretion was the same as courage. 11 notes. He had had 4 answers, and every one of them cool, and had told himself she was a modest woman, and that he must be patient. At 8 in the morning Sibylla Danby stood in the great hall in her travelling cloak with her gloves on, and thanked him for his hospitality in front of the whole assembled house, and wished him joy, whatever the future might hold. And the phrase went into him like a knife because she said it so pleasantly. He walked her out to the carriage himself and handed her in. "Will you not ask me anything?" he said. Sibylla looked down at him from the step, and for the only moment of that entire morning something moved behind her face. "You had 11 weeks, she said. "I would have been glad of one word said out loud, where somebody else could hear it. That is all it ever wanted, Your Grace. A word out of doors." She settled her skirts. "Please tell Corinne I have left her the green ribbons." The carriage went down the avenue, and the rooks came up off the elms in a great shouting cloud, and the Duke of Rooksley stood on his own steps and did not go in for a long while. He began that afternoon to take the thing apart. He asked Mrs. Otway, his housekeeper, whether Miss Danby had received any note upon the Tuesday, and Mrs. Otway said that she had. It had come up on the salver from the hall table. He asked to see it. It had been left behind in the grate of the yellow bedroom, half burned, and the housemaid had not yet done the fires, and Tristram picked it out with his own fingers and carried it to the window. It was his hand. It was very nearly his hand. The capital R was his, and the way he crossed a double T was his, and it asked Miss Danby to come to the orangery at 4 o'clock upon a matter that could no longer be delayed. He had not written it. And the paper was hot-pressed common post, and every sheet in every writing box at Rooksley was watermarked with the crest. He sat down on the window seat with the scorched half-sheet in his hand and felt the whole summer turn over. He did not go to Corinne. He went to her maid. Dorcas was 19 and had been crying already before he said a word, which told him most of it. He was very gentle with her and gave his word that she would keep her place whatever came of it. And then he asked her one question, and she told him about the workbox. It was rosewood with a fitted tray, and under the tray were 11 letters, folded small, sealed and unbroken, addressed in his own hand to Miss Sibylla Danby. Beneath them lay 4 sheets of hot-pressed common post covered from edge to edge, with a careful practicing of his capital R. Tristram stood in a girl's bedchamber at Rooksley Park with 11 of his own letters in his hands, unopened, and understood that for 11 weeks the woman he loved had been receiving nothing whatever, and had been answered, in her own name, by somebody else. He had the whole of it out in the small drawing-room that evening, with Mrs. Danby present and the door shut, because he would not humiliate a girl of 19 in front of 40 guests, however much she had earned it. Corinne wept, and then was defiant, and then said the thing that finished her, which was that Sibylla was 26 and plain, and would have been a nobody's wife within the year, and that she, Corinne, had only taken what nobody else had the wit to take. She is not plain, said Tristram. She is not beautiful. No, he agreed. She is better than that. And it took me 11 weeks to find it out, and you have cost me the finding. He laid the letters on the table, and the 4 practice sheets beside them. I shall not prosecute. Forging a hand is a hanging matter in this country, and I would not have that on my conscience or upon your sister's. But you will write tonight exactly what you did and how, and you will sign it, and your mother will sign as witness, and it will go to Miss Danby, and after that you and I are strangers. Mrs. Danby, who had gone the colour of ash, said something about the family and the season and Corinne's prospects. Madam, said the Duke of Rooksley, your elder daughter walked out of this house yesterday morning without one unkind word to anybody, and left her sister the green ribbons. Prospects are not the difficulty in your family. Corinne went to her great-aunt at Cleve within the week, and stayed there 4 years in society, which is very quick at such arithmetic, drew its own conclusions, and did not have her back until it had finished enjoying itself. He did nothing to help that along and nothing to prevent it. Sibylla had gone to her godmother at Sanborn, 40 miles off, and had within the fortnight taken the mistressship of the parish school at £30 a year, which was the coolest possible way of announcing that she did not intend to be rescued. Tristram took rooms at the Blue Boar. He did not send up his card at once. He wrote to her instead, and had the 11 letters carried round to Miss Verrall's door in a sealed packet with a note that said only that they were hers, that they were unopened, that they had been written in July and August, and that she was under no obligation to read them nor to answer, and that he would call on Thursday at 11, and would go away again at 5 past if she preferred it. He called on Thursday at 11. She received him in her godmother's parlour with the door open, and Miss Verrall knitting in the corner, and he sat for a quarter of an hour and asked after the school, and went away. He called on Friday, and on the Monday and the Tuesday, and every day but Sunday for 5 weeks. He brought nothing. That was deliberate, and it was the hardest discipline of his life. He was a man who had never in 38 years solved a difficulty without money, and there is not a jeweller in England who could not have furnished him with an argument. He brought nothing. He came at 11 and sat with his hat on his knee, and talked about the drains at the school and the price of coal, and a boy called Tom Sallow, who could not be got to spell, and once, when it rained very hard, he mended the parlour window sash with his own hands because Miss Verrall's man was laid up. In the 3rd week Sibylla said, without looking up from her mending, I have read them. Tristram's heart went sideways. And they are very good letters, she said. The one about the heron is the best thing anybody has ever written to me. She bit off her thread. You still have not said anything out loud. I am aware of it. Well, said Sibylla, and went on mending. He asked her formally in the 4th week in the parlour in a low voice, and she refused him. Not because of Corinne, she said, when she saw his face. I do not hold my sister against you. I hold the 11 weeks against you, and I hold the orangery against you a little, and mostly I hold against you that you are asking me here, where there is nobody but my godmother and the cat. You have always chosen rooms with one door in them, Your Grace. I should like, once in my life, to be wanted in a place with windows. He thought about that for 6 days. The Michaelmas assembly at Sanborn was held in the long room over the corn exchange, and it was the whole of that little world. The attorney and the doctor and the corn factors and their wives, and the schoolchildren's mothers, and the vicar and Sibylla Danby in her one good gown of grey silk standing by the tea urn because a schoolmistress does not dance. Tristram walked the length of that room in absolute silence, because 40 people had recognized his carriage in the street, and the fiddles had faltered when he came up the stair, and he stopped in front of her and did not lower his voice at all. Miss Danby, I am going to say this here because you were right, and because I have spent my whole life saying important things in small rooms with the doors shut, and it has cost me the only thing I ever wanted. He was aware of every face in the place turned towards him and found, to his astonishment, that he did not care. I love you. I have loved you since the 2nd week of July, when you carried a hedgehog off my carriage drive in your own bonnet and would not be laughed at for it. I wrote you 11 letters and had not the courage to hand you one of them myself, and I have been justly punished for it. I am asking you, in front of all these good people, to be my wife. If you say no, I shall bow and go down those stairs and never trouble you again, and every person in this room will have heard me ask and heard you refuse, and I will not have a word said against you for it, in this town or in mine. The long room was so quiet that he could hear the rain on the skylight. Sibylla Danby set down the cup she was holding, and it rattled, which was the first sign of nerves he had seen in her since the orangery door opened. That, she said unsteadily, was said out of doors. It was. Then yes, said Sibylla, and I should like it minuted that it took a public building. They were married at Sanborn in the November, in the parish church across from the school, and the whole school sang badly. She kept the mistressship until Christmas because she would not leave the children mid-quarter, and the Duke of Rooksley drove her down to the schoolroom door in the ducal carriage every morning of those 6 weeks and waited at 11 to bring her home, in full view of the entire town, which was, he had come to understand, rather the point. The 11 letters live in a rosewood box on her writing table at Rooksley, in a case with a glass lid, and she has been known to make him read the one about the heron aloud after dinner, out of doors when the weather serves. Because his wife has a long memory and a very dry sense of what a man ought to be made to do.